I know what would be funny. And he tosses the can into the fire, and the rest of us run, and it made this gigantic explosion. Nothing came near us. And my one friend grabbed a tank of propane, and we ended up setting off the tank of propane too. Just blew, made it sounded like a bomb went off. Ted Mackey, retired tech sergeant from the U.S. Air Force, and I became interested in the Bigfoot stuff here as a kid. The first thing that got me into it, watching with my friends, we would watch the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, and it scared the daylights out of it. When I rewatched that movie, it still scares me, even though it's a 1972 movie. And then the topic scared us and fascinated us, but we didn't really believe it was real until we kept on our hikes in the woods here in Conneaut, Ohio, in Northeast Ohio, the whole area around here. Camping out around here, we kept having experiences, and we had definite what you would call Class A sightings that literally scared us out of the woods. We still kept continuing. There's a whole lot of the stuff that we had happen. We just didn't have. You didn't have all the information back then that we do now of just some of their traits and activity. But we would have classic all of those on all of our camping trips, and we had multiple times had sightings.
So you started with this movie that you just kind of halfway believed was real or not real. Now that was what was the name of the movie again?
The Legend of Boggy Creek from
Yeah,
it
now
was made in 1972.
that got a lot of attention. I interviewed
Yeah.
a man from down in that area that does a lot of research in that way. What was it about that movie that scared you so much?
Well, we've seen that just I guess the idea that creature was out there in the woods. I live in area I live in here in Northeast Ohio is just heavily wooded, thick forest, large rivers, deep valleys. And it, it was very much something that we could picture could very easily be around here. However, every adult in our life told us that it wasn't real. Although we would hear stories in Ohio history class about the grass man from the Native Americans, but they still said it, that it was folklore and legend. And so the stuff that scared me about the movie just was the way it would actually how that thing came up to the houses, and yeah, I guess there were some scenes in there where it really literally attacks a house, and there's a firefight, and one of the guys, how this thing was able to evade them, it was just the whole thing was scary with it.
How soon after you watched that movie did you get out in the woods and start having some of these more personal
Well,
encounters?
that got us to go out in the woods and hike and go out in the woods and explore around. And we started watching that. I'm talking like grade school age, me and my group of friends, and we're still in contact with each other. We had several of the sightings together. One of my friends, part of what got us into that movie was one of my friends who lived right on the river valley in town. He lived down actually in the valley, which there weren't many houses in the valley. Kept telling us about one of these things that was coming up close to his house on a regular basis. And, we picked at him, said he was nuts or whatever, but he continued to say that. And then he's the one who got us to watch the movie. And the movie scared the heck out of us. And we're like, is that really coming up by your house? And we said, well, let's go out in the woods and look, and we're kids. We started going out and exploring in the woods. Yeah,
what was the very first experience that you had as a kid going out into that wooded area,
it
trying to
was
sort of
19,
looking for it? So what was it that you experienced that you said, okay, there's something going on here?
well, we never believed what he said was real for several years now. He had been going out in the woods for probably 3 or 4 years and doing these hikes, with playing around in the woods. That was kind of life in my hometown here. It was the best thing to do around town was to go play out in the woods and play along the river. And we were out in an area, um, and now we were actually a little bit more grown up, and we knew we had. It was 1988. It was late fall, and we have around here we have what's called Indian summers, where after we get freezing cold, we'll all of a sudden get these. It'll warm up into like the 70s and 80s, and you got a nice couple nice days left, and it's like your last ones of nice weather. We on one of those, we knew it was our last chance to get out and do a hike before everything was freezing. Um, and we went out into the woods and we were exploring around there. It was a Saturday, and we were exploring all over the entire day. And we had come across some weird things. We actually come across what I now know is like structures, and we seen them and thought some people set them up, and we knocked them down. That was probably our first mistake. Um, or we didn't, some of the stuff we just didn't know. Um, and so we were going to leave, and I suggested, hey, let's go in over to one other part of the woods just one last time, so we can get a look at it before the winter hits. And when winter hits here, we're talking like feet of snow. What we get here, lake effect snow. So it's literally like you're done. You're not going to go for a hike with feet of snow on the ground. Um, and we did one more pass through there, and we were crossing a stream. And on the other side of the stream, the path went straight about 80 feet up a hill. And at the top, it was almost at the top of this hill, was a large creature standing there shaking a tree and did this growl. How we noticed it was the growl, literally, this growl was so powerful. It like thumped me in the chest. It felt like a force hitting me. And when I looked up and seen it, I started backing up, and there was a big group of us. There were 7 of us out there that day. And I started backing up as we were all walking single file and bumping into the other one, which got the other person to look up. And everyone seen that kind of in amazement. One of the guys in our group yelled, "Run," and we all ran. And it did not chase us out, but we thought for sure it was. And we ran like it was for our life. But what I seen, I came back and described it to my parents. This was 1988. I described it as the size of Andre the Giant, who I'd actually seen wrestle before, but he was muscular like Hulk Hogan. Um, and I said, I can even still see that in my mind. I can still see its lips moving, teeth. It was that close, and it was that big. It was huge, and I honestly think it actually probably was even bigger than I thought because there was some distance there, and I think there may have been a little distortion from the hill. It was huge. It was massive, and I would put it, say at the time seeing it, I placed it at about 7'2", but I honestly think it was probably closer to 8 foot in retrospect. And I have gone back to that spot. Times changed some of the landscape, but it was enormous, and something blocking our path that we couldn't ignore. And I say it's like reality come crashing around us. Something's blocking our path that everyone told us doesn't exist. Um, so that got us into that. We had several other encounters uh, on that before we ended up.
But
Um,
before we leave this encounter, how did your parents respond to what you told them?
my mother, well, my mother listened to me. My dad told me I seen a bear. Same with my other friends. We went over to another friend's house. We thought, his dad might listen to us, and he said, "You seen a bear or an old hobo?" You know, and a lot of the group of us, which we were all kind of like in a shock, several of them compartmentalized it and said, okay, it was a bear, we're good, and moved on. Um, Three of us, however, that got the best view of it literally said, there's no way that was a bear. Um, so, um, and so my mother didn't tell me I was crazy. My father did. But he, it's like from that, then they didn't even think there were bears around here. And she came back. It was about 2 years later. She actually seen a bear just south of the city. And she came back and said to me, a couple years ago, what was that you seen? And I told her, just no. She goes, well, I seen a bear. So there are bears around here. And I said, it wasn't a bear. And I said, it looked more like a man, but covered in fur or hair. And then it was long because it was like the arm had the long, stringy hair. Um,
Did the group that went out there that first time and saw this thing, did you stay together as a group and continue exploring out in the woods, or did you abandon that due to the
well,
fear of this creature?
okay. So this experience, I mean, it literally scared the daylights out of me. Um, well, then we had the winter time. Okay. And there was really not a whole lot of going out in the winter. Um, but during that winter, one of my friends lived right over by there. They kept having all kinds of strange things happen at their house that I spent a lot of time at that house to where his mother thought they had ghosts because at night something would slap the side of the house. She would see eyes in the window. And now my friend, that house that we were at there, he's an enormous guy. He was one of our, we played on the football team together, and he was a big guy, 6'3", and we looked at him and said, what? And they had these two very large dogs. And because we looked at him and said, why do you got a shotgun next to your bed? You have, like, we're here all the time and you have your dogs. And she's like telling us, shut up. There's a ghost. And I said, if it's a ghost, what's a shotgun going to do? And she just kept telling us, shut up. I'm not going to talk about it. Um, well, we had that happen in there. We actually found in the snow that we found someone was walking barefoot with large feet through his yard. Uh, we found the tracks and we were literally accusing him. We're like, why are you walking around? Because he had this size 15 shoes. And we said, why are you walking outside barefoot? And he says, I didn't do that. Are you nuts? And we couldn't and he put his shoe next to it and it was bigger than his foot, even with the shoe in it, of what we found. Um, his room was upstairs and he never heard it. He just said, my mother's nuts. So, and we kind of said, okay, well, I don't know, we just didn't know what to put it into. So we said, okay, the house has ghosts. So
So did everyone then just believe that this ghost had enormous footprints and was leaving tracks in the snow and looking through the window?
we did not connect dots. It was more after the fact that, especially me and my one friend, especially that was said it was coming up near his house. Um, and since he was a small kid, um, we started connecting the dots because the two of us never lost interest in the subject. But come next summer, I was definitely a. We went out into the woods, but we went out daytime. We would make sure to get the heck out of there before night. But then we started doing camping out. We started camping out down there, and it gave me problems. I was definitely a lot more scared than everyone else. Uh, 1980s and early 90s, you didn't have these really bright flashlights like you do now. Um, but we would be out in the woods all the time, and it just there was a group that just literally followed us wherever we camped, and because it was all right in the same area. It was all within this. You could put the area where we camped, hiked, everything was in this 1 square mile, and where my friend's house that was getting that side of his house slapped. Um, And again, like a lot of the group said, no, it was a, they started writing, they just compartmentalized it as bear. Because if they said it was something else, well, then that mean we had to kind of adjust what we were doing. I don't think anybody wanted to do that. So a lot of this stuff we were able to put together, you know, the different, after learning more about it, and we were able to put together the different dots as we were a little bit more mature, because we just did not connect the dots back then. And a lot of that was a lot of the information wasn't out there.
That's true. So you were experiencing more things than just that original sighting, and then this one person has Bigfoot supposedly, hitting the side of the house, and you have
Yes.
another Bigfoot that's leaving prints in the snow and looking through windows
Yes.
that you're identifying as a ghost. So as a group, that people keep saying that it isn't really anything unusual, it's just a bear or something like that. What were some of the other experiences that were happening to you that you did make it
Well,
pull into that puzzle, those dots that you began to connect? What were some of those other experiences?
okay. So, um, my friend that was having the side of the house slapped and had the footprints in his yard and everything, he lives literally right next door to an Indian mound in our town. Now it's now made into a metro park. Um, but we would go down there. And the Indian Mound is along the river in town here, and we started getting into like camping out in the tents, and it was fun. So we started to go, well, let's go down by the river and camp out down there. Um, and we started doing that from 1990 through 92. We were camping. We camped down there. Um, we had my one friend would bring powdered donuts for the morning, and every night they were stolen. And I'm talking like we would camp out there in the summertime. We would literally spend, you know, we obviously had to go home because we were kids at times, but then we were back out into the woods, and we spent pretty much all of our summer in that. Daytime, nighttime, we would be down in that area. We would, uh, and we had things like we had the smell of something. We're trying to set up our camp for um, getting everything ready for the night, and we would smell all of a sudden. It smelled like a rotting dead animal, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, First of all, the smell wasn't there when we got there, but it is now." And we would go looking for it because we're like, there must be a dead animal near here, and we can't have a dead animal near where we're going to camp. And we would go looking for it, and time after time, it was multiple times, we never could find a dead animal. We never could find what was making the smell. We didn't connect that to anything other than the wind must have shifted, or we just missed it, or we just okay, and then we just wrote it off because we were teenagers. We weren't that bright. Um, so, and my friend always brought his powdered donuts for the morning, and something in the middle of and through the night after we'd all fall asleep, his donuts would get taken, no matter where he put them. Every morning he would get up and say he'd be all mad, ready to fight us, saying, "Who took my donuts?" And we're like, "We were all sleeping. We didn't touch your donuts." Um, and they were our marshmallows that we would have for our fire. We'd always set up a campfire. Our marshmallows would disappear too. And one night I was hearing some noises there, and my friends were telling me, "Shut up, you're just being paranoid." Because I kept feeling like I was hearing like something walk on 2 feet around us. And uh, I actually woke up in the middle of the night to see this thing standing over top of my friend eating his bag of donuts, and was literally terrified. Like I had to like not breathe, not blink, not move because I'm like, it's going to see me. Um, just closed my eyes and started praying, just said, "Jesus, Lord Jesus, help." And I watched it set the bag down and left.
Hi, I'm Linda Eastburn of Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, and I have a new book out called Threshold to Encounters. It's about 40 years of research and experience with all of these wild cryptids that many of you I know have encountered yourself. You can find it on Amazon.com. Was that same smell present when you saw this, or was it gone? Okay, so it wasn't
No, there
there.
was no smell, that there was nothing to, alert us to this. And it was very quiet. I don't know how I actually, I think it was divine intervention how I woke up, because I don't have another way of explaining even how I woke up, because I didn't hear anything. And it was just all of a sudden, like bam, I woke up suddenly. Thank God I did not sit right up. I just opened my eyes. Um,
And
so
saw it
we,
right there. It was
yes,
within your visual scope the minute you woke up.
yes.
So
So
what else, describe what you saw. Describe this being that you were looking at.
it was hairy, um, and its back was to me, and it was hairy. It was large. Like I said, my one friend in the group was the biggest. That was like 6'3", and it looked way bigger than him. It looked muscular. I could see this muscular definition of arms and legs. I couldn't see any clothes on him. That's the big thing, is that like the shape was the shape was pretty human in a lot of aspects, but there's no clothes and there's this long hair, and way bigger or and more muscular than anyone I'd ever run across.
So you're looking
Um,
at him from the back, but you recognize he's eating the donuts. How did you know he was eating donuts if you're seeing him from the back side?
Back, because I could hear it, and I could see in his hand on the side, and he was standing over top of, straddling. The legs were straddling my one friend who was sleeping, uh, which all the more had me frightened. Like, he just this is so big it can kill us instantly. I think if like that's why I was like afraid to make a noise.
Did your friend
Um,
sleep with his donut bag?
he had it right next to his head, and so I seen it in hand, and I seen him put the donut bag down, um, bend over and put it down, uh, and the last I seen it start to turn towards me, and I closed my eyes up real quick and just started praying.
And
Um,
so when you finally came out of that prayer or opened your eyes again, what did you see?
um, I heard it. I heard it walking off. I could hear its steps walking off, and I did not open my eyes until it got quiet. I didn't hear any steps. Um, and I waited. I did not want to make a sound. I didn't know like if it was waiting outside the camp, but I was like petrified. So I just stayed there, and I was awake the rest of the night. Had to have been hours, until the sun started to come up, and I started to hear the birds chirp. There was another thing too, is down there, the creek, or river, the river valley there. You hear lots of the frogs and birds and everything else, and everything was quiet. Everything got real quiet, and I don't know if it was even just that everything got quiet, that's what woke me up. And so I guess, I just it was just a total paralyzed with fear feeling. So, um, that was just the one episode. So when I in the
Well,
morning, then
let's explore this just a little bit more because I want to
okay,
know, your how long was it from the time that you heard this walk off before sunrise came up and you felt like you could at least maybe get out of your sleeping?
I honestly realized it's like, and I said it had to have been. It was hours, and I said I just stayed there, and I just continued. I was praying the entire time. Um, I was just sitting there praying. Lord Jesus, protect me.
When
Uh,
did you feel comfortable enough to get up
when
to talk to
well, I seen that the sunlight, it was starting to get light, and I was started hearing the morning birds. And when I started hearing the morning birds, I just like, okay. And it's like with the sun up, there was like I could see very clearly. Um, I could see really clear. I knew like, okay, if something's around here, and I woke everyone up then, kind of frantically, and told them. I started to tell them what was happening, and then I realized they're looking at me in kind of a disbelief. And I told them there was a man that came in here and ate my friend that had the donuts eaten and that brought him down. And he was the one who had he lived in another spot along that river that was having, he said he kept having one come up to his house and follow him when he was in the woods. His name is Ken, and he's the one who always would have the donuts missing. Okay. Because instantly when I wake him up, he grabs his bag of donuts and is yelling and cursing at the rest of us about, I'm like, and I'm telling him, no, no. I said there was a guy. I saw, and I said I started to say it, and I looked the other guys. We had a couple other guys with us that were not regulars to the group, and I hesitated because I'm like, they're not going to believe me. Like I knew Ken would, but I didn't think anybody else in that group was going to believe me. And
when were you finally able to tell Ken, or did you tell Ken?
I told him later. Okay, I told everyone in the group there was a guy there, and he ate the donuts. And they said, "Why didn't you wake us up?" I said, "He was standing over top of Ken. You wouldn't have been able to like." I said, "I was," and I said, "I was scared. I was scared he could attack us before you could wake up." And so they kind of ridiculed me for not saying something. Um, so um,
But
I
eventually
told
you told Ken.
Yeah, so I later that day, after everyone else was away from Ken, I talked to him and said, "Hey, this is what happened." And because I knew he said he was running across them on such a regular basis, 2, 3 times a week. They were around his house. So he I knew, and so he told me, he was like, "Well, that makes sense." Um, he literally had to start taking his we didn't quit camping out. That was the thing, is we kept having this stuff happen. And so we following after that, we did like where we camped out 3 nights in a row. We made our plans and we said 3 nights in a row we're going to camp out here. Okay. And it was the prior week we'd had on the weekend, we had we had that incident. The next weekend we had the rotten smell, and my friend Ken had come down there and built a whole little setup for our camp. To spent hours down there building stuff up for us to have like a lean to tent, and he built chairs, everything. He spent the entire day down there building the stuff up, and then left to get all the stuff and get ready to eat. And we all went down there together, and all the stuff was destroyed. And he again got mad at us and said, "You guys must have come down here and did that." And we're like, "Why would we destroy our own stuff?" But he's like, couldn't figure out what it wrecked everything except for the lean-to tent. But it broke. I mean, it looked, someone had just literally come through and trashed our campsite, which was not a common place for other people to walk. So it wasn't like there was a lot of people coming through there. But um, so we had that. The first night, other than that, was relatively uneventful, except for then the marshmallows were gone in the morning. And then the next night, we would play, after we'd get everything set up in the camp. We would play a game of, it was kind of like a team hide and seek game, but to catch the person you had to tackle them. We called it ambush. Um, so we would team up to play that, and I just had this fear crippling over me because you didn't we used this. Only one person was allowed to have a flashlight. Um, and I just got, I would actually like hide just a few feet outside of the fire light because I just was like terrified still. And I think I was still probably a bit traumatized from a couple of the other incidences that we had had. And we were, so we're playing that. And we had one guy with us who was like the hide and seek champ. He was very athletic and a tall guy, tall, muscular guy. And one of my friends starts yelling his name. The guy's that name was Charlie. Well, one of my friends starts yelling, there's Charlie," because that was like if you were able to get him, like that meant you were like the best because we considered him the best. So we went to go running after him, and something tore through the woods like a train. Um, just tore through the woods like we were running after it, and we literally stopped when we seen how this was just tearing through the woods, the noise it was making, and it was running away from civilization into a place where you got a couple miles to the other side to civilization, and no sane human being would run that way with no flashlight. But it just tore through the woods, breaking branches, everything, running away from us. And so none of us got a look at it other than hearing it and seeing all the trees moving as this tore a path through the woods. So then we are asking them, we're like, they're like, was that couldn't have been Charlie? And then all of a sudden, Charlie hears all the screaming. He's hiding in the opposite direction, and he was up a tree. And he hears all the commotion and hears us saying his name. And so he comes down and says, "Who are you guys chasing?" And he comes from the opposite way that we're all looking, which scared the heck out of us. So then we're questioning my friend and saying, "What did you see?" And he says, "It was tall, muscular." He says, "It looked like Charlie." He says, "But it was dark." And Charlie's black. So he would look dark like that. So um, we're like, so now this area we're camping is at the base of the Indian mound. And we kind of we said we're teenagers. I don't want to say that we were that bright because we compartmentalized it and said it must have been a ghost from the Indian mound. That was our way of explaining it away, and then just went back to playing our games and thought, okay, but we're like, it creeped us out. It was in the back of our mind, but we just went, okay, let's just go on. Um, So the rest of the night was fine, except for in the morning, the marshmallows and donuts were gone again. um, so we went to camp out the third night, and it we all the group, there was supposed to be about 8 of us down there, and everyone canceled except for 3 people, 3 of us, and we all had like assignments for what we were supposed to bring, and some of us forgot our stuff. Well, I always had this big 1980s Rambo style knife with me that I had, anytime I went into the woods. And I remembered that. I forgot my flashlights. I got my pack and I'm like, my flashlights are gone. My other 2 friends come down and said, we forgot our flashlights. And my one friend was supposed to bring his 22 in case anything happened. And he's like, yeah, I forgot to bring that. He said, I forgot to bring the gun. So we built said, we'll just get a bunch of wood. We'll build a big fire and we'll be fine. It'll be the 3 of us. Um, so it was my friend Ken was one of them, and he remembered his donuts, and I remembered the marshmallows, but we forgot all the other stuff. So we didn't. We just the 3 of us sat around the campfire. We're sitting around the campfire. On the opposite side of the creek is it's about an 80 to 90 foot cliff that is straight up shell cliff wall, like nothing can possibly scale up or down it. And on top of that is one of the oldest cemeteries in Ohio. Okay, it was it's the original cemetery that's in town there, and we so we're sitting there and it's nice and quiet. We're sitting around just talking. And from we couldn't tell which direction, but all of a sudden a rock come flying out of the woods and landed into our fire, directly dead center of our fire. And we stop and we're like, what was that? Uh, and we were all like, nobody seen where it was coming from. We were paying attention to talking to each other. And so we're like, couldn't figure out what it was. We're confused. And we're like, well, must have been something falling out of a tree or something like that. And no sooner, here comes a second rock and lands dead center of that fire again, same exact spot. And we could actually see in the fire it was rocks. And uh, my one friend says somebody must be up in that cemetery throwing rocks at us. And we're looking, I'm like, that is like hitting that fire would be like trying to put a stone about this big into a basketball hoop from over a football field away through trees. Uh, so that's what I even said to him. I said, they have to be a heck of a shot. They put two in the same spot. And he's like, there has to be someone up there messing with us. So that's the only explanation. Nobody would be said we would have seen somebody coming down here and it was pitch black that night. There's no way anyone can walk around in these woods without a flashlight. You'll get tore up. Prickers, burrs, run into trees. I mean, we knew from our games we'd play without flashlights, you couldn't run through. You couldn't really move around without making a lot of noise. And just, we had always had a lot of ripped clothes and everything from doing that. So as we're still trying to process this, a third rock comes flying in, lands dead center of the fire, but this time I seen it come in. And I said, and we've seen that. And he's my one friend, his name was Bill. He was kind of like the bravest one of us, I guess you would say. But he says, there's got to be someone up there. He says, we can go up there and try to see if we, it would be a walk, but maybe we can get up there and try to catch them. And I said, no, wait. I said, there's a tree canopy above us. And I said, did you hear any of I said, I seen it come from the opposite direction into the woods, which is like away from civilization, away from the road that we walked in on. And he's like, nobody would be over there. And I said, that's the direction the rock came from. And he said, no, it has to come from up on top of the cliff. And I said, look up above us. I said, we have all this leaves. I said, did you hear the rock go through the leaves? And then it kind of hit him. And he says, give me your knife. And I'm like, okay. So it's like, I'm going to go out there and look. And I'm like, no. I'm like grabbing him. I'm like, no, don't do that. And he's like, what? He's like, I got to figure out who this is. I says, they can see us and we can't see them. I said, we're still thinking people are screwing with us. But he says, so he kind of low crawls, and the rest of us, me and Ken, sit there pretty much terrified. And he low crawls out there and is gone for about 15, 20 minutes. And when he comes back in, he says, I couldn't find anything, but he says, it smells like there's a dead animal outside of our camp. And so like we're like really terrified because we're like, well, that wasn't there, earlier. And he's like, so we sat up, and my friend Bill kept the knife and he had it held up and kind of yells towards the wood, you come in here and we'll, he's come in there and he yelled a few expletives, says, we'll kill you. And then the rest of the night, now it's probably about 11 or 12 o'clock at night. We're scared. We're too scared to gather up our stuff and leave. So we sat there huddled together right next to the fire with my friend holding the knife, and we stayed awake we kind of got to where we had each other's back covered, so there was no blind spot, and we sat up the entire night until sunlight. Um, and as soon as it was sunlight and we knew we could see, we all like grabbed our stuff and got the heck out of there. Uh, and um, so we go back and tell the rest of the group, hey, what happened? And I get the rest of the group says, you know what, we should move our camp further back into the woods. So again, we weren't that bright. Um, because we thought somebody must be coming from the road and messing with us. And so we next weekend we have the entire group with us now. And it was the last time. So that was actually the last time anything happened because we unknowingly found a way to get rid of it without knowing, just being stupid kids. Because we'd always have like the bottles of bug spray and you know deep woods off and everything. Um, well, one of my friends thought, "Hey, I know what's would be funny," and he tosses the can into the fire, and the rest of us run, and it made this gigantic explosion. Um, which then we thought that was pretty cool, and everyone else who had a bottle of bug spray tossed it into the fire that night, and there was about 4 or 5 large explosions. And we had a quiet night. Nothing bothered us. The donuts were there in the morning, so weren't the marshmallows. Nothing came near us. Um, and we contributed it to because we moved the camp farther back into the woods. It's kind of like say, I was looking back on this. So we said, that's cool. Next night, everybody grab as many of these aerosol bottles as we can for the next night. We'll spend the night making explosions. And so we all camped out there the next night, and we must have thrown everybody like at their can cleared up like every kind of aerosol bottle they can get. And my one friend grabbed a tank of propane, and we ended up setting off the tank of propane too. Just blew, made it sounded like a bomb went off. Um, but that's how isolated this was. No police are coming, even though all these explosions are going off. It's how isolated the area was. Um, and we never had anything happen ever again um, down there. And then we started just to get older and ended up, we graduated high school and then started going different ways. We're too busy. Everybody's too busy working and everything else to go camping. And that was kind of the end of the stories for that. So that was the initial that got me interested into the subject. Now, I'd heard like several reports, and then you always would hear stuff around there. People would always say that they seen things around there. They just were called crazy. So, um, I didn't have anything happen for several years. Was into doing cross country running, and a couple of friends that I worked with at a pizza place. After we got off work, we would go out into the country and go run down through. It's one of the places, both of the places that we were running. We would do a loop around, and it was almost a 7 mile run. And dark is in areas where I go and do hikes and find all kinds of creepy stuff now. But we went out for one of the nights after work. It was late summer when farmers were actually out cutting some of the wheat in their fields. And we got our pathway blocked by something shaking trees. Um, and of that group, I was the biggest one and oldest one too. So I told them, I'll charge it. I'll go up just before it and make it look like I'm going to jump onto it. And then I said, you guys cut around the corner and then we'll meet at our stopping place, just sprint. And when I ran up to it, I seen eyes. It looked like a gorilla. It had hold of the branches, shaking the trees, and it was putting out this growl And this one sounded almost female. It was on the back side of it was a farmer coming up with its plow and kept putting its light over on the grove of trees that was there. So I think it was trying to escape from the farmer, and we were blocked. We just happened to come running along there with no flashlights on a dark uh, country road, and and we're blocking its path. When I seen it, like I scared it. It moved back, like it leaned back. And then when I turned and started running, I heard it take off across the street. And kind of after we finished, we kind of were like, "What was that?" And I'm like, "Guys, that was a flipping gorilla. I seen it." And they were like, the other two guys were like, "No way, there's no gorillas around here. This is Northeast Ohio." And I'm like, "All right, but I know what I seen." So, so that's another thing we try to tell people that, and they said, "You seen a bear?" And I said, "I don't know of any bears ever shaking trees at people." So, um, that would have been it would have been the summer of '95, and that was the last experience I had had for a while. Um, so then, because I went off to college, working, and then got my career jobs. I did two career jobs of corrections in a prison and the Air Force. So um, both both jobs, you can't have any fear, uh, and you have to have the greatest of integrity to be successful at your job. So that was then how I spent my career. I'd talk about this some with people, um, and but I didn't have time to go out into the woods there. And then I did 4 combat deployments. After my last combat deployment in Kandahar, Afghanistan, I got injured when I'm a superintendent. I was a tech sergeant. I was a superintendent on a mission there, and one of my troops dropped, accidentally dropped a missile casket, and I caught it and kept it from hitting the ground and tore up my body, tore up my back, my shoulder, my damaged my knee, and like permanently damaged, um, which eventually led for me to be put as 100% disabled. And I started developing from breathing in burn pits, and the, they were burning the sewage, just the open burn pits and oil well fires from the deployments. I started developing all of these digestive problems and breathing problems. They finally admitted that they didn't give us clean water or food that should have been edible too. After they ended up admitting that under a lawsuit. Um, and that is what, like they said, is what all my conditions are from. But what it did is they put me on this. I retired and they put me on. They said, "You have full retirement. You're covered for all your medical stuff from this because it's our fault." Which then opened the door for me to be able to try and go out in the woods again, which led me to starting the YouTube channel. So
What is the name of your YouTube channel?
it's T-Max American Experience. I started
Okay.
out to do this. I wanted to showcase just how beautiful the area I lived in was. And I started out doing that. We live right along where my house is. My town here is along Lake Erie. It's Lake Erie and where the Pennsylvania border meet. It's in the corner there. There's the beautiful woods. There's this beautiful river running through there with this deep valley. Um, and I started to do that. We have the big giant boats, the ore boats come in and dock. I started out, I'm going to show these and see if, and show some of Lake Erie. And then I started to go along the river and started to hike again. Um, and I literally started going into sections of the woods I had not been in since the early '90s. And Started doing day hikes there. Someone on my uh, commented and said, you should check those places out at night. So I said, okay, we'll do that. I'll go there at night. And I, I had in the daytime, I had a couple of things where I had what really got me into it. I had a daytime sighting. I was out with another friend, and it was before I wasn't videoing this. It's where I started to realize I need to video the woods when I was hiking. We had a sighting, and I just caught like a short clip of it, but I had a 15-minute standoff with something with me pointing my gun at it. It was large. I caught it on video and snapped 3 pictures of it moving, but it was something that was much larger than me and faster too. I'd caught it jumping across the stream that in a remote, very remote area just south of the city. Um, I do have that sighting. It's only a 21-second clip. I do have it on my channel. Um, and but I said I need to start videoing these hikes. That was kind of when I like, well, let me start yeah, videoing all of this. So but I would have shot too. My friend literally had to pulled my arm down and said, "Don't shoot it, don't shoot it." He's like, because we're like looking at it, like, what is that? And he's like, you know, it has to be. They're like, it has to be a guy in a ghillie suit, and I'm like, there's no way there's somebody around here that big. I'm 6'1". Um, I'm not gigantic. I'm 6'1", 205, and I look so small to it. And I had bare loads in the gun, but I had a 9 millimeter, and that's why I thought, I'm like, I need a bigger gun. I need a much bigger gun. But had I been alone, I probably would have emptied the clip into it uh, because it was definitely that. I don't know, as you say, is shocking or like I didn't the position it was at on the river was at a bend where it was the perfect tactical spot for an ambush. Um, and we could not get across and we tried going on the other side to get over into the area and literally couldn't. It was impassable. um, we waited until late fall. The water level was down and we were able to get muck boots on and we were able to wade across the river to that spot. And we had to go up a bank a little bit through some heavy thorns that was ripping, it was not easy to get up in there. We got out there to video it, and the place is all tamped down like something large had been camping or been spending a lot of time there. We couldn't find any tracks, but I checked that stream, and that stream took me 6'1", took me 3 steps to get across, and this thing cleared it in one hop. And there's no way I could do this. The thing was huge, and when it seen me, it dove to the ground. So it was kind of hard to get an accurate height. But what I seen the quick glimpse I had of it hurtling that stream, it had to be in the area of a basketball player that I would familiarize as Manute Bol, one of the tallest players in the NBA, about 7'6", right around there, 7'7". But it was much, much bigger and more muscular than him. So I did send the image off to, um, I did send the image off to a couple people who I've met, and kind of because of this topic, sent them to because a guy that I made friends with that does a podcast called Sasquatch Chronicles, uh, Wes Grimer. I got to make friends with him, and while I was on some of my deployments, because the topic always interests me. So I sent the picture to him and said, "Do you think you can get this analyzed?" He was able to do that, and some people that he sent it to, they literally again said, "You're in Ohio, and that's what you've seen," because they're in Washington State, and they expect to see it there. They don't expect to see it in Ohio. But they were able to break down the image and see the arm and the muscular development of the shoulders. Uh, and they said you definitely have something there, and it doesn't look human, and it doesn't look like just the closest thing it would compare to would be some sort of gorilla. So again, that got me back. Like I need to revisit this. Um, so I just started doing the hikes some more, and then on another place, in the daytime, I had a rock thrown at me from somewhere, and I couldn't figure out where the heck it was coming from. And then I had another daytime incident where, again, I was being paced by something, and I couldn't find what it was. I could hear the footsteps following me. I had to draw my gun, put it up in the air, and yelled, "You want to keep following me? You're going to find out what happens." Put the gun up in the air and started walking out with the gun. And the hike I was at. It's a down and back, so I was just across this path, um, no more than 20 minutes prior, and I seen there is a spine and rib cage of an animal is right on the front of my path. That was like literally impossible. Like I have to step over this. This was not here 15 to 20 minutes ago when I come through there. And I had videoed my hike in, and I turned the camera off to walk back. And after I'm like paced, and then I see this rib cage, and I'm like, I might need to turn the camera back on. And so I got up a little ways, and then there is a femur bone of something hanging in a tree that is like hanging right over the path. And then I'm like, yeah, I got to turn the camera back on and videoed that because that was not there either. And I'm like, okay, I got to make some notes of this because then, so I'm like, I'm going to have to come back and check both of these places out where I had this stuff happen at night. Uh, and both of those places are where I've had probably the most creepiest stuff happen to me. Um, the place where I had the rock thrown at me, I went back down. There is a giant, they said 340-year-old tree or whatever that's down there. They say it's an old Native American signal tree. Um, and I was hiking to that and had something scream at me. And it was literally the only thing that literally U-turned me on a hike. I went, nope, that's it. We're heading out. And then something followed me all the way until I got out of the woods. And I have it all on video. And the other place where I had the bones in the trees, I was going back there and I kept getting rocks thrown at me. I mean, by the one of the hikes, I literally had probably 30 to 40 rocks thrown at me. I had to have my gun drawn the entire time. Had something hiss at me. I tell like I have done uh, combat training. I've had to do a whole lot of military training of being able to go through the woods stealthily and tracking and counter tracking and um, um, I knew I'm being followed, but I'm being followed by something along the ridge line, and I'm being followed by something down in the valley with me. And I realized like I am outnumbered. And I had a thermal camera after getting screamed at. I went and I'm like, I need to have a thermal camera. I had a thermal camera. I had a few strange thermal hits, but they kept hiding. They kept going behind trees, large, and this forest has large trees. Um, that are big enough to hide something big. And this one, though, I caught all of it on video. Um, Same thing with the scream, but then I caught all of it on video and I caught it on thermal. And breaking the thermal video down, I would catch heads, conical shaped heads peeking around trees. And then you'd hear me say, "Here comes another rock," whipping. You'd hear it whipping through the trees. Um, but I got associated with a group of people in Ohio. One of my friends from high school and his friends do a YouTube channel called Cameraman and Crew, which their goal is finding the Bigfoot stuff. and it's because of the experiences they had in the same area that I had all of my experiences. And so I got with them and started to learn how to do some more things there. And I've had, when I've been with them, we've had trees pushed over. I've caught the sounds of, the only thing I can describe it as is it sounds like gorillas mating. Been able to catch some amazing things with them that we really don't have explanations for. But and throughout this 2024, they literally give me the nickname the Rock Magnet. I kept having rocks thrown at me wherever I went. I did these night hikes through 3 different states. It was what was it? 10 different counties, and had rocks thrown at me in every single one of them, and found a lot of these weird, I guess, for lack of a better term, teepee structures that I was able to video and document. And there's definitely a whole lot of stuff in the woods all through not only Northeast Ohio, but Northwest Pennsylvania and in Michigan, the northern parts of Michigan. There's the same activity and the same type of things happening all across these same areas, all across these different areas, I should say. Um, and so it's been this adventure here of, because I can tell you throughout my life, people will look at me and will call me an expert on so many things and say, you know, you're one of the most believable people we've ever met. But then when I tell them about the Bigfoot stuff, they say you're crazy. Okay, you may be, you may be one of the most believable person, but I don't believe that. So, um, but one of the things I was able to do is a lot of the areas around that used to be the hiking areas have been turned into metro parks around this county. Um, and I was able to meet the park ranger and go with him on some stuff. And uh, we had a 12 to 13 foot large branch lobbed across, like javelin, across the ravine at us. And we're both dressed. I was dressed in my full camo, open carrying, and he's dressed in his ranger uniform, open carrying. And we were paced by something we couldn't find, and we had that branch javelin at us, and these are all the same areas that I had all my experiences growing up as a kid, but now they're metro parks. Um, and it was pretty confirming. But I wasn't videoing a lot of this. I was out with the metro park officer said I couldn't video when I was with him. So that's just where the adventure has begun, and it's going to continue because I'm kind of like, I don't like having, I guess when you say is that there's a point, I hate to be called a liar. I hate to be said, that you're faking this. It's like, okay, I'm going to go capture as much proof as I can. I'm going to start doing investigation, like I'm going to be presenting things to a jury. Um,
Now, where can people go to actually see that again? Give us your YouTube channel address again, or our
okay,
name.
my YouTube channel is TMAC, it's T Max American Experience.
T-Max American Experience.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
great. So people can go
yes.
see that evidence that you have captured on video and be able to understand all of this Bigfoot experience that you've had through that channel, right?
Mhm. Yes, because even when I started out with the hikes, I started out like one of the things I wanted to do too is um, the animals that they said were in the wood or weren't in the woods, I knew were in the woods, and I wanted to set out to prove that. And so I was initially setting out to document wildlife and captured endangered species and species that the state of Ohio says doesn't exist in their lands. We have, and I have, and part of it's because of my background. Police officers have in the area, county sheriffs, city police, um, and park rangers have been very willing to talk to me about their experiences. So not only about the wildlife, but about the more unexplained stuff. Because doing this, like I said, I set out to document wildlife, and these things found me. And then not only that, some weirder things that I just don't have explanations for. Because I say I'm not a ghost hunter. The only ghost I want is the Holy Spirit. Okay, but I keep catching these disembodied voices on my videos, which is I'm not setting out for, I'm not seeking this. It just seems to keep finding me. And so when I set out on my hikes, they're literally, I go out there and I'm going to try, and I state my intentions, but a lot of them are I'm looking at the wildlife and then whatever else finds me while I'm out there. So, and I love to try to do my hikes going over history of my area because it has this phenomenal background of a history, not only American, but then going back to Native Americans.
You had mentioned earlier something about the legend of the grassman. That's the first time I've heard
Yes.
Bigfoot called a grassman. What is that legend?
Okay. This is from the Native Americans. The actual term grassman wasn't coined until the like the early '90s. Really became popular then, but the Native Americans, it was kind of like the translation of their language meant grassman. Um, it, the Native American legends on this were it was this large human looking creature. Because again, you got to remember the Native Americans didn't have a clue what a gorilla looked like. There was no gorillas in North America. Um, so, but they had the Indians and the in Ohio all had the same legend and lore that they were talk about this thing that the arrows would their arrows would not penetrate its chest, that it would scream, holler, throw rocks, and was a large hairy. They said basically they called it a large hairy man, and it would make its homes in some of the tall grass of Ohio, of especially in the swamp areas. And then so I do a lot of different types of studying, which among those is the geographic features and how just how the land of Northeast Ohio was formed in Ohio, I guess. But um, Ashtabula County, where I live, has very unique features, which has caused a lot of the sightings, I believe, because we have these natural hemlock swamps around here, along with this just heavily forested. And we're the largest county in Ohio in land, but we have less than 100,000 people living in that county. So there's a lot of sparsely populated, heavily wooded areas. And all of these hemlock swamps just literally dot the entire county, including my town, Conneaut. Um, and the activity and reports that I have found that have circulated around these hemlock swamps is um, everything from UFOs to orbs to ghosts to Bigfoot or Grassman to Dogman. Every type of weird cryptid sightings has been, uh, people have, I guess, had these strange encounters all around these hemlock swamps. Um, and so I've been going out to not only just going out into the woods myself, but I've gotten people to talk to me and tell me their experiences. And I've gotten a lot of private property owners to give me permission to go onto their land where they're having some of these that they say they're seeing things. So
Well, it sounds like you've just had a wealth of experience, but as your story progresses, it sounds like there might be something even more involved with this whole situation than just Bigfoot in the woods or even a grassman in the woods. Do you think they?
exactly.
Mhm.
And I didn't really believe that. Now I would always listen to, I'm in the middle of the desert in a war, and I come across on my phone, I come across this site that's this, Sasquatch Chronicles, and I'm not trying to advertise for him, but I did make friends with the guy. I started reaching out and contacted him. Um, and but I'd listen to he does a show literally where he just has people who had experiences You talk and tell your experience. And After that, I started, hearing some of these things. Now, when I've started talking to people, people are telling me the same types of stories that he's getting. Uh, he set out because he had a very terrifying, with his brother, he had a very terrifying Bigfoot encounter in Washington State. And that's what led him to do this. It was literally how he could, I guess it's actually like his therapy, like dealing with this. Um, to which it got me to realize, I have walked through a place, I've had to go through places that, you know, they call the gates of hell. Okay. The devil's backyard. I've had to go play. I had to go kill people in all of these places. And then stateside, I would come in and work, and I would go into a prison filled with murderers, rapists, drug dealers, gang members, violent people. So again, I'm deeply Christian, and 365 times says in the Bible, do not be afraid. And I take it literally. It says, if it says don't be afraid, then I'm just going to do that. So that's kind of how I've done my walk. And then I had to put it in action and combat and in a prison. And so that kind of was what built my attitude for being able to go out and deal with this. Because then the only thing left that had terrified me was from my teenage years of these encounters with basically what I would call a Bigfoot. So I went, okay, now that I'm retired, let's go conquer those fears. But not only that, let's prove it, because people have called me crazy and called me a liar for this. So it's like, well, I want, it's like, okay, that's fine. You can have your opinion. You can think I'm a liar. You can think I'm crazy. Let me get evidence so that you can dispute, so you can look at my video, and then you can dispute it, and you can make a judgment off of it. So I have caught full bodied thermal images of this. I have not been able to get, I have a couple of, on my regular camera, some things that maybe, but again, I'm trying to present it like it's going to a jury. They may be pictures of this. We've definitely caught in the audio, the rock throwing, and pushing down trees. I've had 4 different times this last year, large trees pushed over by me. Um, so, and as much as I was in the woods as a kid and knew there's creepy stuff, you hear the stories when you actually went out there, it's 10 times as creepy as what I even thought it was. No, it doesn't really, like I said, it doesn't actually like scare me. For the most part, I had one thing when I got screamed at, the first time I got screamed at here, that you turned me, that scared me. Um, and again, as you overcome fear with preparation. So okay, I'm going to prepare more. That's why I bought the thermal camera. The thermal cameras aren't cheap. I was able to find one for about $600, but um, I played that scream for my wife, and she said, "Yeah, you definitely need to spend the money to get this camera." And played that scream for her, and then she was more okay with me buying some larger guns. So, and I've done that too, is where I brought family and friends out with me and said, "Here, you experience it with me." And that's why I started doing the channel, though, and that's why I said I want this. I want my people who watch that. I want it to be interactive. You're going on the hike with me. You're going to go on this experience with me. You get to look and zoom in and break down and analyze my video all that you want, and you can
That's
believe what you want.
I think that's a wise idea. I mean, it's one of those things when you have something as elusive as Bigfoot, because we're all, in this together, kind of trying to figure out what's real and what isn't. And the hoaxes are out there, the reality of what people see are out there as well. And just trying to decipher all of that information and see what is relevant. It sounds like you're contributing a lot to the basis of footage that is available for people to look at and to experience. And I appreciate that very much. I'm going to have to end our interview today, but Ted, I really appreciate you sharing so much information with us. And and for your courage and the relevancy of what you're putting out there right now. I seriously do appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, appreciate the opportunity. When you reached out to me, I'm like, I'm actually humbled that somebody wants to talk to me. I don't consider myself, my videos, somebody said, you need to start putting your face on the videos, because I'm like, I don't really want to show my face. It's not about me. I'm like, I don't have that kind of ego of it, that I want it to be about me. I don't. I want it to be about, the nature, the woods. I want that to be the star of my videos. And I want it to be so that it looks like you're taking that hike with me. Um, and if you're looking at my face all the time, you're not going to get that experience. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's not the showmanship, it's the actual information you're putting out there. And that makes your story even more authentic, I think.
well, and that's the thing. That's what I tried to do is give the full totality of the circumstances, so you can tell. I'll show my vehicle so that you can see I'm there alone, or and I try to give the full details of the circumstance so that everyone can, I guess, properly evaluate it. Um, and they can believe it or they can not believe it, and I guess that's all right with me. So, but it's like I'm going to put out the best evidence I can.